The air in the school gymnasium was thick with the scent of cheap coffee and forced suburban cheer during the 5th grade Parent Appreciation Day. I saw her immediately. Willow, my ex-husband William's new wife, stood by the cookie table holding court. She was wearing a blindingly white silk dress that looked too expensive for 10 a.m., and she was surrounded by her glossy friends, all air kisses and designer handbags. I was there quietly watching my daughter, Penny, proudly display her science project. Then Willow spotted me. Her bright, calculating smile vanished, replaced by a look of amused disgust. She raised her voice, deliberately loud enough for the 4 women to hear. "Oh, look, girls! It's Diana. Still wandering aimlessly, I see. Such a shame, isn't it? William says she spends all day dusting the walls of that tiny apartment he bought her. Bless her heart, she just can't seem to hold down a job." The group erupted in laughter, a sharp, mean sound that cut through the polite murmurs of the event. My cheeks burned with shame and a flash of white-hot fury. Willow didn't just mock my financial status. She mocked my very existence, painting me as a pathetic charity case in front of our child's school community. The injustice was deep and immediate. I gripped the paper cup of lukewarm coffee so hard the cardboard bent, resisting the urge to pour it over her perfect silk dress. What the hell just happened to her? The public humiliation was a direct hit. My first immediate emotional reaction was a physical tightening in my chest, a desperate need to disappear. My breathing hitched, and I could feel the critical eyes of the other parents on me. But beneath the shock, a cold, hard resolve began to form. I straightened my spine, forcing a small, almost imperceptible smile. They saw defeat. I felt a dangerous, terrifying clarity. My name is Diana Hayes. I am 42 years old. And until that moment, I thought I was simply the quiet, recently divorced mother working hard to rebuild her life. Now I realized I was something else, a woman who had been underestimated and publicly shamed one time too many. The weight of the title hung over the interaction. My ex-husband's new wife mocked me in front of her friends for not having a job. Little did they know I owned that it all started when moment wasn't the divorce, it was Willow's arrival. She was the reason William left 3 years ago, trading my quiet strength for her loud, demanding glamour. This public attack was just the latest maneuver in her campaign to erase me from Penny's life and William's memory. I left the gymnasium, not running, but walking with a slow, deliberate grace, already formulating the plan that would dismantle her arrogance. The conflict had been brewing since the moment Willow sauntered into William's life. William and I were high school sweethearts, married for 18 years. We built his architectural design firm, Vantage Studios, from a sketchpad idea into a respected company. I was the silent partner, the financial backbone, managing the investments and the administrative chaos while he played the charismatic public face. Then Willow, 28 and a walking fashion magazine, was hired as his marketing consultant. The affair was swift, painful, and total. William came home one night and coldly informed me he wanted a more exciting, visible life, code for a life with Willow. The divorce settlement was contentious. William, with his sharp lawyers, managed to paint my contributions as merely secretarial, leaving me with the agreed-upon custody arrangement for Penny, a decent but small lump sum, and the little apartment he constantly referred to as my settlement shack. He thought he had left me powerless and dependent, financially stable but creatively dead. This deep, unfair treatment was rooted in his misogynistic belief that my intelligence and financial acumen were secondary to his public-facing career. He and Willow treated my settlement money as a sign of my failure, a symbol of my reduced status. The high emotional stakes centered entirely on my daughter, Penny. Every time Willow humiliated me, it was a strike against my role as a good mother. Willow was obsessed with projecting an image of the perfect blended family, which required me to be the resentful, pathetic ex. The apartment William left me wasn't a shack. It was a strategically sound asset I had quietly bought years ago, a place of peace. But what William and Willow, in their self-absorbed arrogance, never realized was that while I was managing our home and raising Penny, I was also building something else entirely. During the 15 years I handled the finances for Vantage Studios, I had channeled my innate understanding of real estate markets into personal investments. Every bonus, every stock dividend, every penny of my inheritance I invested. By the time of the divorce, I had a separate, significant portfolio, hidden from William's greedy eyes and legally untouchable. That lump sum settlement, I didn't need it. I was already the silent, wealthy owner of several commercial properties. The irony was suffocating. Willow mocked me for being jobless, yet my real career, the one she knew nothing about, dwarfed William's firm. Driving away from the school, the anger curdled into a glacial focus. I called my lawyer, Mr. Stern, a discreet, silver-haired professional who had handled my divorce with quiet efficiency. I need you to look up the ownership details for the Atrium, the commercial building in the downtown arts district, I instructed, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. The Atrium. It was William's pride and joy. Not only did Vantage Studios occupy the entire top floor, but the ground level housed Willow's new, expensive boutique, Willow's Closet, her primary source of income and social status. This was the place where they thrived, the visible monument to their success. Mr. Stern, who knew the extent of my hidden assets, chuckled softly. "You want to check on your investment, Diana?" he asked, knowing I had purchased the entire multi-tenant building 18 months ago through a silent holding company, DH Commercial Holdings. "Yes," I replied, the word a promise to myself. "And I need you to confirm the exact date Williams' firm's lease expires. And Willow's boutique." The long game was starting. I was not going to crash their lives. I was going to dismantle their foundation, brick by legal brick. The scene shifted to my apartment. It was small, bathed in the soft afternoon light, and it was my sanctuary, not my shame. I went to the locked storage cabinet and pulled out the thick, meticulously organized file labeled the Atrium. The building was a beautiful glass and steel structure, but to me, it was now a loaded weapon. My revenge had to be strategic, not impulsive. If I revealed myself now, they would panic and find a way to mitigate the damage. I needed to wait until their dependence on the building was absolute. Willow's lease was set to expire in 6 months. Williams was tied to a 3-year contract, but I knew, from years of managing his books, that Vantage Studios was perpetually behind on cash flow, relying on huge, sporadic client payments. Their visible success was a mirage. I focused on Willow first. Her boutique was failing. I knew the monthly sales reports, all part of my property management data. She relied entirely on the boutique's exclusivity and her social media presence. My first move would be to subtly undermine that facade. I logged into my anonymous professional property management portal and authorized a new, inconveniently scheduled maintenance project. It was a small act of calculated chaos. The first visible ripple of my strategic action was felt a week later. I received an email forwarded by my property manager, who had strict instructions never to reveal my identity, detailing a complaint from Willow's Closet. The maintenance I had scheduled involved scaffolding placed directly in front of their prime window display for 3 consecutive days. The email was typical Willow, aggressive, demanding, and self-important. "This is completely unacceptable. The scaffolding is destroying my customer traffic and cheapening the look of my brand. I demand an immediate stop to this work. Do you even know who I am?" I leaned back in my chair, the small act of disruption bringing a wave of quiet satisfaction. She was focused on the scaffolding, the minor annoyance, completely blind to the hand pulling the wires. My internal monologue was sharp. She cares only about the aesthetic, not the underlying stability. I replied to the property manager, authorizing an email back. Maintenance is necessary for structural integrity. Work will proceed as scheduled. See Lease Clause 4.b. The beauty of my revenge was its pure legality. I was simply being a meticulous, responsible landlord. I knew this small disruption would make her irritable, putting pressure on William, who hated dealing with her stress. The emotional depth of the betrayal wasn't just the affair. It was the years I spent making William look good. I was the silent engine of Vantage Studios, managing the cash flow, hiring the talent, and crucially, negotiating the initial lease for the atrium, the lease he now relied upon. He constantly diminished my intelligence, telling me, "You don't need to worry your pretty little head about the financials, Diana." This deep personal betrayal meant the revenge had to target his pride as much as his pocket. I remembered the hate-traded look in Willow's eyes in the gym, a look that said, "You are obsolete." I decided to ramp up the financial pressure. I instructed Mr. Stern to discreetly hire a commercial real estate analyst to provide an independent valuation of the atrium. The results confirmed my suspicions. The building's value had significantly appreciated. I then instructed my property manager to send out a formal, but generic, notice to all commercial tenants, including Willow's closet, of an impending standard market rate rent increase effective with the next renewal period. The increase was substantial, 15%. For a struggling boutique like Willow's, that increase would feel like a mortal wound, forcing her to confront the reality that her perfect life was now subject to the whims of an unseen landlord. The next scene was one of delicious, controlled tension. I was having coffee with Clara, my best friend, who was blissfully unaware of my secret life as a commercial property magnate. Clara, however, was a font of local gossip. "You won't believe what happened at the country club," she started, leaning in conspiratorially. Willow was complaining for a solid 20 minutes about bandit contractors and extortionist landlords ruining her business. She said her new rent increase is going to bankrupt her if her sales don't magically double. Clara paused. "She actually blames you, Diana. She thinks William is doing this to her because he secretly misses you and wants to sabotage her." The irony was perfect. Willow, in her arrogance, had created a twisted, emotional narrative where I was secretly pulling William's strings, completely missing the financial reality. This revelation gave me a key insight. Willow's narcissism made her an easy target because she would never suspect a cold, calculated business motive. She would always default to emotional drama. This was a gift. The chaos I was creating was making her life miserable, and she was blaming the wrong person, allowing me to remain invisible and untouchable. The tension built as the rent increase notices hit William's company, Vantage Studios. Though their lease had more time, the notice of the coming increase sent a chill through his accounting department. I knew from my internal monitoring that William was already dealing with a major client payment delay, pushing the firm close to its operational limit. I also knew that their high-profile new office space in the atrium was a huge source of debt and pride. My next move was psychological warfare, leveraging William's pride. I had my property manager, still anonymous, contact William's head of facilities, requesting a detailed, costly report on the structural integrity of the fourth-floor load-bearing walls, the very floor directly below his top-floor executive suite. The request was based on a fabricated historical concern, a complex, technical piece of jargon I learned years ago. This forced William to spend thousands on engineering consultants and divert his already thin financial resources to proving his office space wasn't collapsing. It was a targeted, non-illegal disruption that made him feel hunted and financially desperate, without ever connecting the dots back to the quiet, jobless ex-wife. The power shift was now in motion. William, under immense financial and bureaucratic pressure, did something predictable. He tried to offload the stress onto the only person he still perceived as a resource, me. He called my personal number for the first time in months. His voice was strained, no longer the confident baritone of a successful architect. "Diana, I need to talk to you about Penny's tuition fees," he began, the familiar parental excuse. I cut him off, my voice steady. "We finalized Penny's education account 3 years ago, William. You know the deposit dates." He sighed, dropping the pretense. Look, I'm having some major issues with the Atrium management. They're being impossible about this structural report, and Willow's losing it over the rent. I know you know how to deal with complex leases. Can you please call them? Just mention my name. They'll listen to a professional. His arrogance was boundless. He was asking the woman he discarded to fix the problems created by his new life, problems she was, in fact, orchestrating. I simply replied, "My consulting fee for complex real estate matters is $500 an hour, prepaid. Good luck, William." I hung up. The feeling of reclaiming my professional worth after years of being minimized was intensely satisfying. The emotional roller coaster intensified during Penny's school play. William and Willow were seated 3 rows ahead of me. Willow, still smarting from the rent hike and the scaffolding chaos, was whispering animatedly to her friends. I caught a snippet of her conversation. "It's all part of the universe testing us, girls. Jealous ex-wives and greedy landlords. But we will rise above it." She was gaslighting herself and her friends, clinging to the victim narrative. I watched William. He looked haggard, his forced smile not reaching his eyes. He kept checking his phone, his posture rigid. The thought of him sweating over the structural report I demanded brought a sense of grim vindication. I saw him glance back at me once, a quick, panicked look, searching for something. Help? Maybe, or confirmation that I was still the pathetic woman he left. I gave him nothing. I simply focused on Penny, clapping harder than anyone else. I was the rock he had discarded, and now the floodwaters were rising. He was finally realizing the value of solid ground. The scene ended with William taking a call in the middle of the performance, his urgent whisper disrupting the play, showcasing his unraveling to the entire audience. I decided it was time to introduce a new layer of complexity to my financial maneuvering. The revenge needed to target the very foundation of William's financial security. During our marriage, I had ensured William set up a very specific, irrevocable trust for Penny's future inheritance, money separate from the divorce settlement. I had intentionally structured the trust to invest only in specific, high-yield municipal bonds, many of which were tied to the infrastructure projects of our city's largest construction firm, Magnate Builders. I knew that William was currently vying for a massive, city-backed contract with Magnate Builders, the contract that would save Vantage Studios. My strategic move was simple. I instructed the trust's independent manager, who I also secretly controlled, to contact Magnate Builders' financial officer, expressing serious and unexpected liquidity concerns regarding the municipal bonds, requesting a major cash-out. This was a completely legal, fiduciary duty move that sent a red flag directly into the heart of Magnate Builders' finance department, subtly questioning the stability of a key investor, an action that could easily influence who received the lucrative city contract. The tension escalated when William's pursuit of the Magnate Builders' contract hit an invisible wall. He called me again, this time sounding genuinely frantic. "Diana, I don't know what's going on. They've suddenly gone cold. They asked weird questions about investor confidence. Did you talk to anyone?" He was grasping at straws, his arrogance melting away. I maintained my cold, professional distance. "I only talk to my financial advisor, William, and I don't discuss your struggling firm with him." Meanwhile, Willow was facing a breaking point. The rent increase for Willow's closet was looming, and the new high-end supplier she relied on was now demanding cash-on-delivery based on unconfirmed rumors about the shop's financial instability, rumors I may or may not have helped spread through targeted property management reports. I observed them at a local cafe. Willow was sobbing, her makeup smeared, while William, focused on his phone, barely acknowledged her distress. The antagonist was losing her composure, and the stakes were now critical. If William lost the Magnate Builders contract, both Vantage Studios and Willow's expensive lifestyle would collapse simultaneously. The financial pressure created an emotional vacuum. Willow, desperate to project an image of success, posted a highly curated photo on her Instagram, A picture of her and William, smiling falsely, captioned, "Celebrating William's huge new deal. So proud of my hardworking man. Take that, haters." It was a blatant lie, an act of pure public gaslighting designed to reassure her customers and silence her insecurities. This lie was the perfect weapon. I immediately instructed my property manager to issue a formal, legal default notice to Willow's Closet for a minor, but strictly enforceable lease violation: unauthorized use of the common area for storage. The notice demanded immediate correction or face eviction proceedings. This was a powerful move. The very day she tried to project stability, I hit her with the threat of losing her physical business space. The news of the default notice spread quickly through the building's small business community. The cliffhanger: I knew the next inevitable step would be for William to intervene directly with the property manager to save Willow's failing business, leading to the first direct, high-stakes meeting. The anticipated meeting was arranged. William, leveraging his status as the building's anchor tenant, demanded a sit-down with the property management CO to resolve the petty issues facing his wife's boutique and his own firm's structural report headaches. My property manager, Mr. Davies, played his role flawlessly, stating that the CEO of the holdings company, the final decision-maker, was rarely available but would make an exception. The tension was immense. I spent a full day preparing, selecting an outfit that screamed wealthy but anonymous investor, a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, sharp but unremarkable. The meeting was set for the following morning in an unmarked, sterile conference room outside of the atrium. This scene was crucial. William and Willow would walk into the room expecting to charm or bully a faceless corporate executive, completely unprepared for the reality that awaited them. I practiced my neutral expression in the mirror, allowing only a fraction of my cold satisfaction to surface. I was no longer the soft, ignored ex-wife. I was the ultimate authority in their lives. The cinematic moment of confrontation arrived. William and Willow walked into the conference room 5 minutes late, radiating an aura of entitled stress. William immediately launched into an aggressive tirade about unprofessional property management and frivolous demands, all while Willow sat beside him, nodding haughtily. I sat at the head of the long table, Ms. Wu, my legal counsel, to my right. They didn't recognize me instantly. I had changed my hair, my mannerisms, and my clothes since the divorce. It wasn't until William stopped mid-sentence, his eyes squinting, that he realized who was sitting across from him. "Diana," he choked out, the color draining from his face. Willow gasped, a hand flying to her chest. I simply gave a small, slow tilt of my head. The reveal was devastating. I didn't say a word. I let the fact that I was the CEO of DH Commercial Holdings, their landlord, sink in. Ms. Wu, enjoying the silence, calmly slid a stack of documents toward them. The eviction notice for Willow's Closet, effective in 30 days, based on a lease violation. The first big twist exploded. Willow shrieked, jumping out of her chair. "You witch! You did this! You bought the building just to ruin me!" She turned to William, tears of fury streaming down her face. "You told me she was pathetic. You promised me this building was safe." William, however, was silent, his eyes fixed on me, now shifting from shock to calculating panic. "The firm needs this office, Diana," he whispered, completely ignoring Willow's dramatics. "You can't do this to Vantage. We built that firm together." I finally spoke, my voice low and steady. "I own the building, William, and I own the firm's lease. You neglected my contributions for 18 years, and you mocked me for my joblessness, Willow. Now, I am simply being a meticulous businesswoman." Then came the twist I hadn't prepared for. William pulled out a thick, sealed folder. "I know about your holdings, Diana, and I know about the Magnate Builders contract. They are pulling out of the deal because of financial uncertainty in your bond trust. If you sink my firm, Penny's trust funds lose their primary long-term investment. You're hurting yourself, too." He was using Penny's future against me, revealing a new low of his despicable character. The accusation about Penny's trust fund was a lie, a desperate, last-ditch act of gaslighting, but it held a kernel of truth about the perceived instability. I let him think he had a point. I knew the bond trust was diversified, but he thought he had found my Achilles heel. I leaned back, offering a small, cold smile. My fiduciary responsibility to my daughter is sound, William. Your firm's solvency is not my concern. Then I introduced my own counter-twist. I had Ms. Wu present William with a document he hadn't seen, the property deed for the atrium. I pointed to a tiny, obscure clause in the original purchasing documents, one I had inserted years ago, the option to rebuy any of the building's commercial leases at fair market value if the tenant breached a material term. Vantage Studios has been in default on 3 maintenance fees in the last year, William. I am exercising my option. You have 60 days to vacate. I'll buy out your remaining lease terms. Sign here. The realization that I was not just evicting his wife, but literally taking his company's office space, the symbol of his entire career, was a masterpiece of poetic justice. Willow was screaming, but William was silent, broken. The emotional impact on William was total. He looked utterly defeated. The man who had dismissed my business sense was now facing ruin because of a tiny clause I had written years ago. Willow, seeing William's defeat, turned her rage on him. This is your fault, William. Your pathetic architecture firm. You said she had no power. The confrontation turned inward, a beautiful escalation of the antagonist's self-destruction. William, finally seeing his life's work vanish, yelled back, Your boutique has been bleeding money for a year, Willow. I've been paying your rent, and you think my firm is the problem. The truth, raw and ugly, was laid bare for me to witness. I realized then that my revenge was already complete. They were devouring each other. I gathered my papers, standing up slowly. The paperwork will be filed with the city tomorrow. I suggest you both hire moving companies, I said, my voice echoing the finality of a closing door. I left them in that sterile room, still screaming, still blaming, the tension dissolving into the satisfying silence of my victory. The aftermath was a controlled demolition of their social standing. The news of Vantage Studios losing its lease and Willow's closet being forcibly closed rippled through the professional community. No one needed to know that Diana Hayes was the landlord. The sheer failure was enough. William's business partners, seeing the instability, began quietly divesting. Willow, desperate to maintain her perfect life facade, attempted to spin the eviction on Instagram, claiming they were moving to a stunning new location, but the blatant lie fell flat. People knew the boutique had been served an official notice. I kept my head down, focusing on the future. I used my holding company to finalize the purchase of a majority share in a highly respected regional construction firm, the real leverage. This subtle move was the financial foundation for the next, final twist, which would permanently secure my position as an unstoppable power player. The final twist involved William's desperate attempt to save his firm. 2 weeks after the eviction notice, I received a certified letter from William's lawyer. The letter, full of professional pleas and carefully worded legal threats, was a Hail Mary pass. William was attempting to negotiate a new lease for Vantage Studios in a different property I owned, completely unaware that I controlled multiple holdings. The arrogance was stunning. He was essentially begging his ex-wife for a new lease, still thinking he could outsmart or charm his way out of disaster. I instructed Ms. Wu to draft a response that was both legally binding and psychologically devastating. A flat rejection, stating that DH Commercial Holdings does not invest in high-risk, financially unstable tenants, attaching the 3 maintenance default notices from the previous year. It was a professional, documented critique of his business acumen, the ultimate destruction of his pride. He was finally being judged on his competence, not his charisma. The biggest emotional payoff came during Penny's final school concert. I saw William and Willow across the room. Willow's high-end dress was replaced by a strained, tired look. William was dressed in a cheap, ill-fitting suit, his body language defeated. His firm was packing up, forced to move into a tiny, dilapidated shared office space miles away from the city center. Willow's closet was officially empty, the prime window space now covered with for lease signs. I maintained a pleasant, non-confrontational demeanor. I walked over to William and quietly handed him a business card, not mine, but the official card for my newly acquired construction firm. If you ever manage to get your firm back on its feet, perhaps you could consult for us, William, I said, my voice gentle but laced with quiet power. He looked at the card, his eyes widening as he recognized the name, one of the biggest, most stable firms in the state. He realized I wasn't just his landlord. I was now an executive in the very industry he relied on. William looked up at me, his face a mask of shame and disbelief. You bought Magnate Builders, he choked out, the reality of my success finally crashing down on him. I didn't correct him. I let the illusion of my massive, untouchable power stand. Willow rushed over, seeing the terror in his eyes. What is it, William? What did the jobless hag do now? She spat. I turned to Willow and gave her a genuine, triumphant smile. I didn't need a job, Willow, I said, my voice clear. I simply needed to be the best investor. And now, I own the future of this city's real estate. You wanted to mock me for dusting my walls? I own the air you breathe. I gave her one final, devastating look of utter indifference, turning my attention back to Penny, who was now walking toward me with a shy, happy smile. The emotional payoff was the look of pure, utter defeat on Willow's face, the moment she realized she had mocked an industrial titan. I embraced Penny, the warmth of her small body dissolving the lingering chill of the confrontation. I had achieved everything. William's firm was crippled, forced to scramble for survival far from the spotlight. Willow's social status was ruined, her boutique a painful memory. They lost everything because of their own arrogance, underestimating the quiet woman who had built her empire in the shadows. I sold the atrium for a significant profit 3 months later, liquidating the final connection to their toxicity. My life now is one of quiet, genuine power. I am an executive, a mother, and a confident, strategic businesswoman. They never contacted me again, too ashamed to face the woman they tried to erase. I walked away, thriving in a world they could never touch. The lesson? Your greatest power is the one you hold in reserve. Never mistake quiet patience for weakness. I may have been the ignored ex-wife, but in the end, I was the one who owned the future. If you've made it this far, you understand. Respect is non-negotiable. My worth wasn't defined by the laughter of mean-spirited friends or the judgment of an ex-husband who called my contributions secretarial. My story proves that silence can be a weapon, and the patience to build your own empire can be absolute power. If this resonated with you, if you've been mocked for your quiet ambition, tell yourself this: your silence doesn't make you weak. Your boundaries don't make you difficult. Your survival makes you extraordinary. Never let anyone define your value based on their narrow view of success. The revolution happens when you decide to write your own ending. My ex-husband thought he left me with a handout. He didn't realize I already owned the city. Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.